Hi, short video on creating lines from chord tones. So let's see if we're doing a blues, and we're doing blues in G, and the first chord is a dominant chord. So I'm going to think of G7 and other voicings that I know of dominant chords like G9, just for the shapes to give me the chord tones. And I'm also going to think of the arpeggio in this position. Oops. That 2-octave arpeggio, where the third is on the 2nd fret of the A string or the 7th fret of the E string. And then I'm going to go from, I'm just going to take it in order, and I'm going to go from my root to my third. And I'm going to keep it really simple, but I'm going to embellish it a little bit. So, I mean, that could be a line in itself, just. And I'm going to take it through anything that I find that I like. I'll try it in different octaves. So, there's my root and third there, and there. Okay, and so the simplest thing I can do is just approach the third from a semitone, either above or below. Or from a semitone above. Oops. I guess I do that voicing or that fretting here. So all those can be the beginnings of lines that might not sound like much at the moment, but that, going from a semitone below the third, is going from the flat third to the major third, which is a classic, of course. And that can be the beginning of a more complex line, like you can add going from the root to the third, that's to the fifth, that's to the, so if that's from the root to the third, then the third to the fifth by chromaticism, and then just fifth to the seventh, flat seventh. That can come later, but first of all, as an exercise, just try from one chord tone to another, and like I said, keeping it simple. So that was root to third, and when I do eventually fill in notes around or getting to the third, I'm either just going to think of simple things like a semitone above or a semitone below, or I'm going to think of the scale or mode that all these notes are coming from, or that the notes of the chord will be coming from, which is the Mixolydian mode, which is like the major scale but with a flat 7 instead. So it's handy to know that one as well. But if not, you could just know the arpeggio and just play with semitone approach. Enclosure, which is a semitone above, then a semitone below, and then the note, or the other way around, a semitone below and a semitone above. That sort of thing. So I'm thinking of, at the moment, just going from the root to the third. So that was semitone below, that was a semitone above, and adding that sort of enclosure, semitone above, semitone below. And then I might have exhausted that, so now I'm going to move on to going from the third to the fifth. Because on the A string in this position I've got both on the same string, the thing that immediately comes to mind for me is chromaticism, just going up from frets 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the third, that's the fifth, and then you can add something to it. I just added the flat 7 then. But that's one way of getting from the third to the fifth. I could just use the notes of the Mixolydian. that could be a line. If you don't like it, don't use it. I quite like the chromatic thing. And then I could go back to the root, or I could go to the flat 7, or I could just stay on the 5th, and I could go back to the 3rd. And then try, and remember it's only an exercise, so it might not be fantastically musical, but you're learning the sounds of the chord tones, and you're learning sort of really basic units that are going to be good to build upon, because they're going to be very structurally strong, because they are the notes of the chord that the band is playing. So if the band's playing a G, and you're playing 3rd and 5th, and then you can add, like I said, notes from the Mixolydian, and then that's a chord tone again, that's the root. But if you're playing basically, or if you're playing mainly chord tones, it's going to sound strong, whatever line it is, even if it's really simple. That was just sliding into the 3rd, going up to the 5th, and going back to the 3rd. Or staying on the 5th. I mean, these are all classics. Or cliches, because they're so strong, they sound good, and so they get used all the time, or even overused. So I was doing from the 3rd to the 5th. Now I'm just going to try lines from the 5th to the flat 7, and there I was just sliding into the 5th, and then hitting the flat 7. And let me try it here. And there, I'm already getting a different rhythm. Or, yeah, so I've already got a few lines. Even just going from the 5th to the flat 7 is strong. And of course that sort of thing, so I'm just hammering on and pulling off from the 5th to the flat 7. And then I went up to the root, or the octave. I can approach starting on the 5th, and I can approach the flat 7 from a semitone below, which also happens to be a note in the Mixolydian. And that's just going back down, and then ending on that 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the Mixolydian. I can play around with going back and forth between the 5th and the flat 7, and then just a semitone below this flat 7 and back to the flat 7. So there's of course the famous the all blues thing. And then finally from the flat 7 back to the root, or the octave, and you hear that all the time, don't you? Flat 7 to root. And then something else added, that was of course the flat 3 and then the 3rd, so that's my flat 7, and I was just hammering on to the octave. And that was a flat 3rd to 3rd again, and back to the root. So I could hammer on, I could hammer on and pull off. That was hitting the 3rd, flat 3rd, bending it up slightly to suggest the major 3rd, but not quite getting there, the blues bend. That's chromaticism, flat 7, major 7, octave. So just going through that, like I said, it might not sound particularly musical, but there are units that you can add to, and you will find yourself, as I was then, coming across classic sounds or cliches of guitar fills and solos, because these chord tones are the basis of the harmony, and so they're going to be what sounds good. They're going to be very structurally strong in your either fills or lead playing. Okay, hope that helps.